You know, please come in. You know, it's really very difficult for anybody to speak to a new crowd, a new audience. It's not so easy. Speaking to an audience that you are familiar with, it's a big difference, especially if there's years involved. They've been listening to for years. And as it is with any developing a new friendship, it takes years for that friendship to develop. But what is developing anyway? What is developing? What makes a friendship develop? First of all, it's stopping the comments. Stopping the comments, the comments of the initial impact of getting those initial pictures. And it takes some time before the comments die down. And then it leaves a lot of room and a lot of space for the friendship to start to come a lot closer. But most people don't quite understand what comments does to anybody or to any given situation. Comments. Are they all working here? Can you hear? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Let's see, got maybe one more here. Behind you, can you check behind? I think she's having trouble. Oh. Is it, no? Yeah? Okay.
There's noise behind.
There's too much noise. Can I have a couple more? Yeah, with this here?
Noise behind.
Yeah. Is yours working?
English, yes.
English? Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think we're. Is everybody? Yeah. Yeah. Is it? Are you hearing? It's coming out pretty clear. Okay. All right. To come to such an event, such as this, to listen for the next few hours, everybody has a different agenda, and what this agenda is for. Some people come here to such a thing for growth, either in relationships or within oneself. Some come here to learn to be more spiritual. Some come here to resolve some problems, internal problems that has arisen in their life. And there's all kinds of agendas. But most people don't pay attention to the initial comments that usually come out so easily, so commonly, so uninterruptedly, that it literally destroys you could say, not just the reason why you're coming, but you waste a lot of time and waste a lot of money with comments. For instance, last night I gave a very light speech this other location here in Austria. And this one gentleman, you could see he was very sharp, very keen, very sharp, very friendly face. He came up and he said, I could see that when you're in the very beginning, when you're looking at everybody in the eyes, you're absorbing their energy, that you need everybody's energy. Oh boy. But he said he heard the rest of the speech. Well, he couldn't have heard the rest of the speech. Because the initial comment, and it's a very intellectual comment. It's a very intellectual observation. And people are always trying to find reasons for everything that they see. They're always trying to box everything. Box it, box it, box it, box it, box it. Oh, I know, I box. Oh, that's why you're doing that. Oh, I can see why you're doing that. Why you move like that. Why you look like that. Oh, I know, because I'm intellectual. And then they continue to hear the rest of the speech. This is very common. Practically everybody naturally does this. It's so natural to do this. And initially, you'd be surprised. You do it to yourself. People do it to themselves. And from day one, when the world of comments is born, and after a year or so, it becomes so commonplace within the structure of the personality and the mind. Then after 3 or 4 years, by the time you're 7 or 8 years old, it's practically invisible. By the time you're 16, you're a pro. And by the time you're 25, you're a super pro. And by the time you're 33, you're excellent. And by the time you're 50, you're just wonderful. And it all lies within the realm of being, you could say, invisible. Comments is a killer. Comments is a real killer to the mind. Comments is a real killer to learning. Comments really creates Berlin walls immediately. It post up on the wall what you saw and what you did. And it takes a great deal. You know how long it takes to tear down a wall? It's far easier to build a wall than it is to tear it down. It's far easier. It is so simple. It is so easy to build a comment. And it takes years to tear down that comment. Because it is the initial comments that really set the stage for a relationship. Not just between anybody, but between your own selves. And to learn about oneself, you have to learn how the mind operates first. You cannot be spiritual whatsoever if you don't know your mind. You cannot be spiritual whatsoever if your mind is smarter than you. You can't. You cannot know your mind if you don't know how your subconscious thinks. You cannot know yourself. In the land of being of spirit, in the land of spiritual, you can play any game that you wish. You can put any colors, you can put any robe, any length of robe that you wish. You can bring all kinds of rules and obligations and how it should be. And yet the mind is a very beautiful tool. It is a beautiful tool. And you have to really pull out what is underneath the conscious mind. It's not so easy. It's very difficult. It's quite scary. And it's profound. It's extremely profound. And it takes an awful lot of heart. An awful lot of heart. Not necessarily, you could say high intelligence is not necessary. It takes just more courage and more heart to look into that deep box of ours that is very dark and very deep inside, and that has and holds all kinds of secrets about ourselves. That's really difficult to really face and to look at. We call that the subconscious. We call that the inner mind. We call that the time that when we sleep and we don't know where we went or what we did or what we said or what happened. We call that I forgot. We call that I cannot remember. We call that, oh, it was the past. We call that, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. We have so many words for it. We even have a license to have a subconscious. We have even created our most beautiful world to have a subconscious. And what is created and keeps that subconscious so impossible to reach is that we separate the land between the subconscious and the conscious by comments. For every comment that you make, you add another layer of the wall. For every comment that you make, the subconscious somehow disappears further and further into the horizon, more difficult to see, more difficult to understand with comments. And somehow, the initial impact of a comment is profound. Not just on the physiological body, but on the whole network between the mind and that personality. It is profound. For what is the profit? What does one gain from a comment? You gain, you could say, gold and diamonds. You gain great profit of pride, inappropriate pride. You get to pat yourself in the back because you know, you understand, so you think. Because your eyes are sharp and you're able to box this and to box that, and appropriate pride becomes inappropriate. And so therefore the human being becomes more alone, more isolated, with more convictions, more reasons to stand alone, more reasons to create war, more reasons to hate, more reasons to see that humanity is really pretty bad, more reasons not to give people a second chance, or even yourself. For it is the twilight zone between the subconscious and the conscious mind that is very important to understand. And it is this very twilight zone that most people just don't even want to look at. For somehow I just close my eyes and go to sleep. And if I wake up in a dream, so be it. If I wake up in the morning and miss the whole night, so be it. Well, it is your right as a human being never to fall asleep. Actually, your body may sleep, but not your mind and not your heart. It is your right not to play hide and seek with your mind. It is your right not to play games with your mind, and never to have a subconscious, but to be of one mind. It is your right. But one really must pay attention to the twilightness between the black and the white, between what we call the subconscious and conscious. The people has literally made it legal to have a subconscious. And yet it does not exist. It really does not exist. It's non-existent. It is a world that we had literally made up in the psychological world to somehow explain why we do things that we don't want to remember. Why we do things, why that person did this. That is too difficult, too hard, too harsh for the mind to come to terms with. Because then we have to look into our own little box. Then we have to look into ourselves to see who it is that I am. It is this twilight. It is very much like the day and the night. Very, very much. But for a student of life to walk away from the flag of being of Austrian or German or Russian or American or Indian or Jewish, Nairobis, Libyans, to be a student of life, you got to somehow be somewhat out of survival. You got to have some peace in your mind to some degree. In essence, to basically start all over again, start from scratch, to find out what is it that this human being is? What is it? It is appropriate to have pride of your own country and of your own flag. It is appropriate to have tremendous pride of your own generations and your family. It's appropriate to have great pride of your work and the money that you have made and the efforts that you can see. But that belongs to this earth. It belongs only to this earth. For you see, inside a human being is much more than just bone and flesh. A human being is much more. For we understand we have the capacity to dream. We have the capacity to draw not just a vision, but to draw realms and to draw other, you could say, sentient beings that can come to us like a friend around the corner, like a great thought, not just for an invention, but a great thought that somehow enlightens myself, that somehow removes the veils and the mask that comments have created, that comments have destroyed, that comments have literally segregated myself from myself. And yet you see, every night we have to go home, put down our heavy heads and our very special, wonderful pillows. We don't have to listen to anybody anymore. The traffic noise has slowed down. Most people are asleep. Somehow the waves in the air, the microwaves and the radio waves, the FM waves and the AM waves, somehow are all slowing down, except for the waves of handies and mobiles flying right and left across the world from one continent to the next. And now it's just between my head and my pillow, now just between my bed and myself. A very personal event it is. A most beautiful event it is. You could say, now I'm going back into my own womb, the womb that once my mother had put me under, going into another world with my eyes closed, a very personal life. And now the twilight will start to appear. There's a small space between being awake and falling asleep called a twilight. And as it is when the day goes away, the sun has already set, and the sky somehow turns to a color of turquoise. It's not dark and it's not light, and now we call a twilight. For it does not last too long. And yet there's something very magical about this light and the frequency that it produces. Very much like with ourselves lying in bed, about to fall asleep, and here's the twilight appearing, showing itself. A very personal event, the twilight is. And before the night comes, before the darkness comes across the land, before the darkness comes to my head and I fall deep asleep and not know where I lie, pay attention, pay very close attention to this light. For this is the same frequency and the same light that separates your subconscious from your conscious mind, that has been created For this is the key and this is the door that you may walk into what you call your inner mind to see you, not as you thought, not as you expected, not as you wish, not as you should be, but as you are. Not Austrian, not Hungarian, not Italian, not even African, and not even Indian. Somehow human, and yet somehow not. Somehow we have blood, and somehow we do not. And like a dream, how it can emanate chaos, and like a dream, how it can emanate so much clarity, one wonders, what is the difference between the two? Am I chaos or am I clarity? Am I a straight line or am I a bunch of lines of sticks? Am I just a light emanating itself, bouncing off a wall, bouncing off a mirror? Am I just a thought that somehow produces for a certain length of time, and then I disappear into the ethers, into the spaciousness of all space? What am I ask? For the human being, it's a development. It is a continuous development using time and space, but using the very land and the nature that you were created on. Your skin is of this mud. Your skin is of this wood. Your skin is of this rock. Your skin is of the water. Your skin is of this air. Your skin is of the mountains. Your skin is of the valleys. Do not just claim what it is to be Austrian, but you are of nature. Do not be ashamed, for you are of this nature. And sometimes it's really quite silly when a human being says, I'm going to go out into nature, when you are a most well-designed piece of nature with a vast intelligence. Whether you are in a skyscraper in New York City, 80 stories above the land, or you're on a boat, a small little rowboat on the Atlantic Ocean on a very quiet day, you are the nature. And for a human being to understand what it is to be a student of life, not just of this continent and not just of the continent next to you, but a student of life where there is a timelessness, not just with the thought, but all thoughts, but a timelessness, not just with an experience, but an experiences that are combined and joined together to form one line, where it's no longer experiences, but a stream of thoughts, a stream of pictures, a stream of words and letters, a stream that is so continuous, there's no beginning and there's no end. And that is really what is more of the human being. Basically, there is no beginning and there's no end. And yet we play somehow with the light of old age and youth, and yet we play with the light of what it is. I remember when I was young, but now I am old. And then in another century or two, and it even could be 5 centuries, there we are young again. And it doesn't take too many decades before we can say again, now I am old. For we come here not just for our bones to reach as high as they can into the sky, sometimes, and I hope, to even touch the clouds one day. And sometimes we even wish and hope that we can fly like the birds, and here we do fly. But the wings are aluminum, The wings, they do not bend so easily. And yet we too have wings in our minds. And yet we too have wings in our own heart. And yet we too have wings in our imagination that can fly high and fast. And yet there is endlessness in it. Yes, there is timelessness in it. No wall can stop it. No bullet is fast enough. Suns won't outlast it. For this is really what is more that human being inside. And yet, the sun is still high in the sky in such a warm day as it is today. And yet, if the people are fortunate, those people, if they pay attention, they will notice the twilight. And yet, if you really care enough, for somehow to put a vibration in your throat, for somehow to kind of shake your brain, and yet, for somehow just wiggle your hips a little bit, and yet, somehow to easily be in touch with yourself. And yet, to be distracted by all the things to do that I have not yet done. And yet, today is slowly edging towards that twilight. And yet, the twilight will come. This we can be sure of. And yet, will I have enough patience? Will I have enough time to pay attention to that turquoise light? And yet, to let that light come in. For to find the magic keys, whether they are made of diamond or stone, made of brass or steel, to find these keys that can unlock our minds, that removes the ignorance, that somehow turns a very bright light inside, not only just our heads, but our shoulders, where the Spirit lives, and inside the very nature of our belly, where our mind lives, and the ancientness of our feet, where the primordial existence lives inside, and in the knees of our knees, where God lives, and in the hands, the mediator between the mind and the heart, and yet the lips that somehow is quite new to this nature, and yet the lips that doesn't quite know what to do with this. For they are not lips of fish, they are not lips of a dog, they're not lips of a chicken. They are lips that somehow has created not just many wars on this planet, but it has created relationships and beauty. And somehow we can use these lips to kill, and we can use these lips to marry, to fall in love. And when you can use these lips to somehow pass a message on to a loved one, I can say so much with such silence, such softness, that no book, no poem, no piece of music can touch. And yet it is the lips itself that has a direct connection into our hearts. And yet with a comment, we can, with a pair of scissors, that comment can literally cut that cord. And the lips, we can use them to kiss because we have to, or it is a tradition or just to put on a show? Or do you really, really mean it? And yet somehow a very tender touch, and yet somehow a very tender kiss. Actually, it lives in the realm of twilight too. For somehow we know when the kiss is very tender and meaningful, the mind goes blank. Somehow the sun has gone down. Somehow it's not dark, and yet somehow you found yourself in between land and water. And yet you have found yourself in between lightness and darkness. And yet that one kiss can set the stage, not just for a relationship, but a marriage or a whole family of new generations on this planet. And sometimes a kiss has started even a war too. A twilight it is. You see, there are keys to understanding the mysteries of life everywhere. Not just when the sun goes down and twilight appears, but when that human being lays down their heavy head of the given day and starts to pay attention to how personal that really is. You're surrendering yourself to what? You're giving yourself up to what? To tiredness? To a new day? To a new way to think? A new way to walk? To boredom? Another day that's just another day. What are you surrendering yourself to every night? And if there's no forethought, so will the day be. No forethought. You just exist. You just live. The easiest thing to do for any sentient being, for any creature to do on this planet, is to get up and do their day and live out their life. That's the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is get up out of bed. The hardest thing for any sentient being, for any living being to do with any form of intelligence, is to go beyond their nation, beyond their flag, to step out of their realm of ignorance, and to see and understand the beauty of what it is that you are, and to have the courage to see what it is that created you. For what created you is not Austrian, that is for sure. And it's not Hungarian, it's not Indian, and it's not Russian, and it's not Buddhist. Some, they go to another land. Some, they try to dream it. Where can you find it? This thing, this whatever that has created you. Where can you go to understand it? Life is a paradox. It is not above and it's not below. It is not right and it's not wrong. Life is a paradox. It is not dark and it's not light. Life is a paradox. It's not over there and it's not over here. Life is a paradox. You won't find it in your tears and you won't find it in your laughter. Life is a paradox. For a student of life, one must truly pay attention to a wonderful faculty that was given to all creatures, and that is the faculty of an imagination. For learning to use it correctly and learning to do, letting it run its course, it does not take a certain skill, but a certain way of just allowing it to be and to watch the show. And when the imagination is literally, you could say, dissected, blocked, walled in, like a Berlin Wall, like when there is a subconscious and a conscious, your imagination cannot be in its natural form whatsoever. Then it is nothing but speculation and hope and wishes. For you see, a human being can literally reach a stage when you no longer need hope, when you no longer need faith, when you no longer need wishes. And to have the courage to know and have the courage to know. But to give up faith, to give up hope, for they're nothing but crutches, nothing but wheelchairs. But to give these things up that so many human beings literally crave. Because there is a wall. The twilight is not known. The twilight's a mystery. There is a separation between the conscious mind and the subconscious. Hoping that what's on the other side of the wall is friendly. Hoping what's on the other side of the wall that you're going to like. Hoping what's on the other side of the wall matches the map that you have in your hand. And yet, really, what is the Creator and what are the tomorrows for? The tomorrows are for you not to know. That's why they are called tomorrow. To not to know. And the one beautiful thing that a student of life can learn. It's okay not to know. It's okay not to understand. And when it becomes truly okay, the comments will cease. When it becomes truly okay, the comments will not be born and block you and separate you from a relationship. New York, get ne I New Get ne I Hey! to your minds. Peace to your hearts. Peace to your life. And it did. I wonder what it comes down to. Because at the end of the day, with my head on my pillow, now I just have my whole day to myself. And for the next few moments before twilight appears, and my eyes and my mind gets drowsy and I start to fall asleep, what does it really come down to? I'm surrendering. I have literally surrendered my body to this bed. And yet, you see, this bed is your coffin. This bed is your birthplace. This bed is your sanctuary. This bed is very personal to you. You surrender all your worries, all your contacts, all the telephone rings and calls, all the people that you've touched, all the sweat and all the dirt still on your body. You surrendered it. You don't have to negotiate. You're used to it. You've been doing it for too many years. But what are you surrendering to? For what? And what is the next day to you? Is it just to surrender to tiredness? For what? There's a reason we have a sunrise. There's a very good reason behind it. But it is meaningless to most people until you are locked away and put away, hidden from light, hidden from sunlight for 4 or 5 years. And then a sunrise will mean something to you. Or you have been given a death sentence by a physician that you only have 1 day to live. Then that sunrise is going to be very meaningful to you. It's not easy to surrender to another human being for any reason. We all have our pride, we all have our stubbornness, and we all have very good reasons not to. But what are you surrendering to now so easily? And to use this for what? For a good purpose. To find yourself, to discover yourself. No negotiation, no middle person, no mediator, no throwing the dice. Surrender to what? This is a time for the mystic to start to pay attention to one's life and to oneself. To use this time and not just let it burn off as another night to rest your bones. Your time is precious. Use it wisely. Take a break. What about some comments concerning the last? Oh, come on. Oh, yeah, driving 7.5 hours to get here and then fall asleep here. Yeah. Yeah, life is funny. Yeah. Wow. Come on, some questions. Give me some questions. How do we prepare ourselves to use this opportunity, to use this moment that people just easily pass over? People just pass it over. You know, how many times have you passed it over? Okay, let's consider this. Okay, you know, most people in the world today are so busy in the third world, you know, the first world and the third world, huh? Very, very busy people. In the Western world, even more so. And when it comes to time, and most people in the Western world, you know, this is very important, especially in Europe. Not so much to the third world, but their time is different too, because they, you know, to them it's more of sunlight. So it still equates to pretty much the same time. There isn't much time during the day to finish everything off, and we all have responsibilities and we all have problems. But how many times have you easily passed this over in your life? Okay, let's do the math, because the one thing that changes you, the one thing that can change a person is profound evidence about what you are up against. Profound evidence that has been in front of your nose that you have not paid any attention to. Profound evidence. So let's do the math. 365 days a year, except for the leap year. Right? Let's take, if you are, what's the average age in here? 36 maybe? 35, 36, average age? Huh? Okay, the average age is 49. 49? Am I better there? Better there? Make you feel good? Okay, not 49, 48? Okay, all right, the average age, okay, 19. All right, make you feel really good. All right, so the average age is 19. So we have an age 19. 19 times 365 is what? 19 times 365, okay, 48,642 days. Okay, so we got this. I'm terrible at math, so don't. But it sounded good. All right, so you got 48,000 days that you have just passed over, okay? Wow. Now what about the ones who are, let's say, 36 years old, times 365 days? How many times have you passed over this opportunity? Now let's take your busy day into consideration, because every hour that you can spend, which is really quality time on yourself, and not just going for a walk or going to entertain yourself at a movie or at an opera or some play or whatever. I'm talking about really contemplating what is it that you are. Why do you exist, period? How do we find our door to get inside, not only into our head, but into our emotional body, our mental body. Our physical bodies, our doctors are doing pretty good with that, but we still need to feel our gut, so we get to feel the sensations of ourselves. So it's our physical body too. And to get into these doors, we don't have much time to think about it. You have to consider, you're Western people, you have been taught under a certain education of how to reason, how to provide your let's say, how to rationalize, how to negotiate with yourself and other people, how to spend your time, and how logic basically works. And even though everybody has, you could say, a different variation of logic and reason, and everybody has a different variations of what common sense is, but there's still some, let's say, some headline where everybody has some idea where it's somewhat agreeable to what all these are, to some degree. So we're all pretty safe, because we can all communicate and we can all drive cars, most of us, and we know how to buy things. So this is the common sense and the reason, the common sense and the logic that we are all based under. But quality time, whether it's 36 years times 365, or whether it's 50 years times 365, how many minutes have you spent on yourself to get inside your own head, inside your own heart? Quality time. Quality time. And not just thinking about it intellectually, but quality time. One time, you could say, time frame where people get in is when a person gets hurt and disappointed, and eventually that leads to tears to lots of people. If it doesn't produce tears, if you don't work out the emotional aspect of it, it can turn to anger, and hatred, resentment. More Berlin Walls will be established. But if the tears come, and it hurts like hell to have these tears come, because it's a surrendering. It's nothing but a total surrendering to the process. It's a surrendering to the situation that hurts one's inappropriate pride to do this. And it's wonderful that women can cry a lot easier, and men should be able to cry a lot more, but not as often, because men are not designed to cry all the time. They're not. Women have more access to do this, so they can vent out the emotions a lot easier as a result. Men, we know, it's not so manly to tear, but it happens. And somehow they find their own way to tear inside without tearing. And you'd be surprised how a lot of men do cry, but people don't let them see them. You'd be surprised. They're just very cautious. They're very private when it comes to this. And that in itself is a door in. It's a beautiful door in. Because it takes you right from the skin, right from the social person, the personality, the persona. It takes you right inside. Easy access. Door just automatically opens. There's no magic in it. Just a little hurt in it. But what if there's really another way to get in when there's no hurt? To surpass the hurt. But one does have to consider, I wonder how many minutes or how many hours or how many days or how many workshops will it take to reach that point. So then if the human being starts to understand the element of time itself, not by the minute, not by the second, not by the days, and not by the workshops, and even not by the years. Because you really got to consider all these times that you have lied down and just let that go through. Let that just bypass. Because we're all basically pretty tired by the time we go to bed. And either we like to read some form of a magazine or a novel or something to just numb us out so we don't have to think anymore. So we can somehow bypass this stage. I wonder why we do that. Without keeping the eyes open and looking into the dark, taking these quality moments, making them very, very precious. Because people, whether you have 1 minute of quality time or whether you have 1 billion years, the mystic is inside you. You are that mystic. And whether you had not paid attention during this quality moment of surrendering to your bed and to your pillow, it's actually surrendering to nature. You're surrendering to the nature of it all. You're surrendering to the phenomenon of time and space, leaving the world of what we call the conscious and going into the world of what we call the dreams. And sometimes we have literally woken up into what is not even a dream. It is more than a dream. It is more real than this light here. It is more real than this world here. Some of us have. And we know that. And somehow, when we found ourselves in these particular states, it was the light itself that was the blood. It was the light itself that was alive. And you in the dream body, no matter what you are seeing, whether it is a person or a wall or another tree or a mountain, it's still all made of light, but it's a living light. And you walked right yourself into an ocean of living light. And you did not spend 1 minute of quality time understanding what it is to surrender. It just happened. But if there's no forethought, there's no preparation, there's nothing there to keep this reference point alive, to keep this, you could call it an experience alive, this crack in the sky, this revelation will be classified in a week or a month down the road as you get older into this world as just another experience. The reason most of you are here is because you have woken up into these cracks. The reason most of you are here is because these cracks have opened up in your day, in your living day. You knew there was something more to this life than just what your person usually lives. You know that. And somehow this world is upside down. This is just not an ordinary world, but it's an ordinary world when you are ordinarily asleep. But it is very much an extraordinary existence. It's an extraordinary world, actually. We live, actually, what you would call in a miracle. For we exist, and in a moment we will not. As 1 century passes, as 1 millennium will pass, as another 100 million years will eventually elapse, and who will be there to count the centuries What calendar would it be? You see, the moment of your night of falling asleep. What you do to prepare is to have some form of an understanding of what you're dealing with. You need to count all the days that you have just elapsed and let it go by without thinking of it. For you are headed off into an adventure, another world, into the dream state. It's a very living and real dream state. It's just not falling asleep and waking up. What do you think being born, being conceived is? You were asleep and you found yourself conceived because that one fateful night when that young woman and that young man had gotten together and made love. And whether you were conceived of lust or love, you were conceived. You were asleep and now you're awake. You have been conceived. It wasn't long inside the womb of your mother. You were awake and now you were much more awake. Somehow you found yourself in another bubble in the womb of your mother. Getting forced out of the womb. And now here you are in another bubble, but much bigger. You left the dream of the womb. You left the dream before you were conceived. And how we walk in from one world into the next. And yet, very funny thing, if one just closes one's eyes and thinks of all the days that you have lived, think of all the experiences you can remember. Think of all the full moons that have elapsed in front of you. And wondering how in the world I got here to sit in this chair so quickly. A blink of an eye, all of a sudden here I am. Whether I am 19, 36, 7 years of age, 52, 86, 103, how fast it came. And somehow, intellectually, we all know when death comes to each of us, it will be that fast. Somehow, how this whole lifetime went by so quickly, and how many nights did I really fall asleep? 365 times what? 87 times 90, for some of us 72, for some of us 56, for some of us 49. How quickly it all went by. And that brings us to the moment, and that brings us to the second, and that brings us to the year, and that brings us to the week. And whether our habit is to fall asleep at 10 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, it is an opportunity to walk into ourselves. It is the most beautiful moment to walk inside ourselves. You prepare by understanding, counting all the days that you had just let yourself fall asleep without thinking about it, without really caring. How tiredness took so many nights away from you. And laying down your body just because it's at nothing but habit. And sometimes we were a little too drunk, or we have too many drugs inside our bodies. And sometimes we force ourselves to sleep because we have to get up so early the next morning. And once you count all the days, and you've got to figure out how many days or how many nights you devoted yourself to really surrendering to thinking about it. Surrendering to what and to whom? For you see, when you pass away, you're going to have to surrender yourself to, whether you like it or not. And that is what the night is kind of all about, to help us really prepare to really understand what surrender is. To what? And if you realize that it is 37 times 365 plus the leap years, and there's not one night that you thought about surrendering to nature, to the bed, to what existence is, to the phenomenon of night and day, now you can start. But you will see that the habit is unbearable. You see that the habit of just letting yourself fall asleep is going to be quite strong. And you're going to see what you are up against with yourself, how much you really do care. Something so ordinary that billions of people do every evening, just fall asleep. Life is a preparation, and that's what this existence is set up for on so many levels, is to prepare. We prepare ourselves for elementary school. We prepare ourselves for primary school. We prepare ourselves to go into the grade 10. We prepare ourselves to go into college. We prepare ourselves to go to work. We prepare ourselves to go on that date. It is a preparation. But the preparation is continuous inside your own mind and inside your own heart. Always be a warrior and never be anything else. Always be aware of your backbone and your back. Your body is very intelligent. It really has so much intelligence. It is quite remarkable. It is more intelligent than that brain of yours. And your body loves you very, very much. It fights for you. It fights bacteria and viruses. It tries to keep you erect, keeps you running, keeps you doing what you want to do as long as possible until it doesn't work anymore. And yet somehow that one fateful night when that young man and that young woman got together and they made love and you found yourself conceived, and whether you were conceived of lust or love, coming from a very deep sleep and now you are awake somewhere inside a womb on some planet, traveling 486,000 miles an hour through space, you have found yourself in a bubble, in a bubble, in a bubble, and in a bubble. And somehow the beauty of popping these bubbles with a pen, somehow watching these bubbles fly through the sky, reflecting all the colors of a rainbow. And somehow these are our thoughts and our dreams and our hopes. These are our laughters and our joys. Somehow these are our defeats and our triumphs. Somehow how the bubbles carry such beautiful stories of all creatures. Even our eyes are like little bubbles that have color and colors of the rainbow in them too sometimes. And I've seen a human being, when they have passed away, all the rainbows in their eyes have gone away, no more color to be seen. So I'm speaking to you, human beings, of nothing but light, of rainbows too. And now that you can shine of many different colors, you can put red on your eyes and be of rage and hatred and anger. And you can put beauty of blues and light blues and turquoise. You can put greens and browns with such grape that you can even see the stars in your eyes. You're just not of blood, of red blood, but you are of a living light that is like a blood, a bubble within a bubble, and the bubble we go back to. It is really not so difficult. It is a language that our education has taught us that has really created such complex difficulties that we have tied ourselves up into knots, and somehow there are so many billions and billions of knots we have tied ourselves up to that it seems hopeless. But I say to you, I love to untie knots. I say to you, I love my scars, I love my mistakes. I love tall mountains that are difficult and impossible to climb. I love deep rivers and deep oceans. I love to choke on water, and sometimes it's nice to see my blood. I love to get tired, and I love to dance. But don't ever let yourself stop from being a warrior. If there are 1,000 soldiers in front of you that you have to do battle with, you do that 1,000 and you do it well. And if there are so many sailor knots in front of you, knots that you have never seen before, those are your knots. Then you spend the time and you work and you learn to untie those knots that logic and reason if you have found yourself that you have walked into a bear trap, you found yourself hurt and disappointed, it's going to take time to heal. Just don't walk into it again. If you find yourself in a deep cave and there's no door, then you become an expert of that door, which is really the door of darkness. Be a professional. Try not to complain. And you turn that darkness, and the darkness will eventually really be your door out. In essence, there's really basically nothing to fear. It's just really a matter of education and understanding. But an education that no books can teach you. You see, most of my time is devoted to making people feel okay with themselves. Do you realize how long it took you for you to be you? Not just 45 years. Not just 59 years. Not just 22 years. Times 365 days. It took countless millions, hundreds of millions of years for you to be you. For each creature is very, very, very old. And for you to have the personality that you do, it took you countless billions, countless hundreds of millions of years for you to have your personality and your way of thinking. You're all very old creatures. And even though that your age may be young, you're still very old. The wisdom of all the ages is a phenomenon. It is external. And yet it lies in your bones. It's a paradox. And when the human being does not understand, the human being has to use the eyes to go out and to search. The human being has to use the ears to go out there to hear. The human being has to use the legs to go out there and run to and walk to. The human being has to use the brain to go out there and use the intellect to try and understand. And then one day the human being will no longer say, "Where were you when I had sought you from building to building, from book to book? I had sought you from tears to tears. I had sought you from logic to reason and from reason to logic. I had sought you out rationalizing. I had sought you through my imagination. I had sought you thinking that you were under my hurt or my pain or my guilt. Where were you?" And all the time, there you were in my bones. As old can be, very quietly there waiting. You're not your mind. You have been tricked and duped thinking that you are your thoughts, thinking that you are those feelings of your thought, and you're not. Your mind is nothing but a tool, a very complex, multidimensional radio stations, billions of stations that it can tune itself into. Nothing but tape recorders, multidimensional tape recorders with many different voices. You're not that. It's nothing but a well-designed, beautiful toolbox that is very necessary to have in this world. And somehow, and I have no idea why, human beings are encapsulated with this bubble of the mind. For to be awake and to be enlightened is to break the very shell of this mind, of this bubble. No more reflections, no more mirrors, no more voices. Just to know. And you can say there is a recipe, and I love recipes. Recipes to bake bread and recipes to cook soup. Recipes for beautiful dinners, Italian and even Austrian. And yet there's also a recipe to even touch the perimeter of this bubble of your mind. But somehow, too many people find it too painful. It is because you're so identified with your thoughts. And this is where faith and hope comes in. For I cannot comprehend, if there was no such thing as faith and hope, we would not have a prayer. There would be no chance at all. But when we break a leg, use the crutch. When we cannot walk, use the wheelchair, and don't be too proud. And have faith and hope that whatever gave you the bones in your body knows what it is doing. Whatever gave you your existence knows what it is doing. Whether you see wrong out there in this world or whether you do wrong, whether people are terribly mean and cruel or whether people are beautiful and joyful. For the existence of time, the existence of having a full life, the existence of having a dream, to have the power to put words on paper, whether it is made of silk or pulp, and to write these words with ink or pencil or a brush of many colors. And yet actually the best pen of all is your heart. The best paper of all is your mind. And yet we write our stories on our faces. We even write our own stories of our whole life on the palms of our hands, on the soles of our feet. And sometimes we even look our story. So after you count up all those years and multiplied by the days, and you have gathered the evidence of how many nights have just slipped by, slipped through your fingers so easily, it's really too easy to pass away in a car accident. It's really too easy to go down in a plane. It's really too easy for an illness to bring us down. And somehow to end up in the obituary column in the back of a newspaper. It's too easy. Don't let your life be so easy. For you're worth more than an obituary column. You're worth more than a newspaper and print on it. You're a life book. Do not let your problems weigh you down to the point that you sink. For look how easy we surrender ourselves to our beds at night without any forethought. So you practice to surrender. You think of all the nights think of all the nights you have left. And use those nights. Use them. Surrender to what? To what? To break the shell above your mind, to break the shell that encompasses your mind, to break the bubble that totally encompasses your whole body. You could say it takes a great faith in life, that life will continue after that. The existence of being a social human being, it is not designed to be easy or necessarily kind at all. Life as we know it from a social point of view is very, very, very difficult. And that's okay. Make it okay. But be kinder with yourself. Be softer with yourself. Be kinder with your words. Be kinder with your touch. For the recipe, not just to bake a wonderful bread. For the recipe, not just to cook a most beautiful and delicious soup. It's faith. More and more kindness. Understanding what the preparation is and constantly working it. Standing as a warrior, even surrendering to your bed to be that warrior. Always to be on guard. To always have that prayer constantly emanating from you deep down inside, whether you're speaking or whether you're not. For all human beings are manifested prayer in the making. We were all nothing but great and wonderful wishes to people a long time ago. A wish that there would be no war. A wish that people would be kinder. A wish that people would be more independent. A wish that there would be much more intelligence. And you can say we are that manifested wish, a prayer from people who cared. And yet I'm telling you, you be more than that prayer. And you pray that other generations are more kinder than you, more intelligent than you. They're more independent, that they have more freedom, and they have more happiness. And you continue on the prayer inside. For the prayer encompasses the past and the future, and the prayer is always prayed in the present. And yet you could say there's really no such thing as the past and the future, and yet there is. Life is a paradox. It makes sense and then it doesn't. It makes perfect sense and then it does not. I was alive and now I have passed away. I just met you yesterday and now you are gone. Yes, life makes perfect sense. We were so young and now we are old. I was so full of energy and now I'm tired. recipe not just to prepare, and not just to be a warrior, but also we need to have an immense silence inside that we know, that somehow we know is there. It is somehow like looking into the darkness and we cannot see what is there. And yet there is a trust, you could say. No goblins, no demons, no wild wolves, no bears, but a trust, it's just a darkness. And you see, this darkness really lies inside too. For we live in a world of darkness and light, and it takes the two for the paradox to really exist. Sometimes what is right is wrong, sometimes what is wrong is right. And yet, it is you, yourself, that is really your own recipe. For it is you that has really walked out your life every day, not me. It is you that has viewed and experienced every day, not me. And this is what the trust is really all about, to trust your own life and to trust your own bones. To let yourself make the mistakes and make it okay. It is you that has to lie down in your bed, not me. It is you that has to go to sleep, not me. Each cell in your body, when you start to have this immense trust within yourself and the Creator that created you, it does not have to be Catholic or Jewish, Buddhist, does not have to be Protestant, does not have to be shamanic. You make it whatever you wish, but it is your Creator. And then each cell in time hears your voice and can hear and feel the vibrations running throughout your whole body. So your body speaks as one, not as a multitude of personalities, but as one voice. Not as a multitude of feelings, but one feeling. Not as a multitude of philosophies, but one philosophy. The recipe. You went to sleep with it every night. The recipe. Written in secret code in your bones. In cryptic code. Maybe it looks hieroglyphic, maybe it looks Greek, or maybe it looks Latin. Maybe it looks like a bunch of sticks lying down next to each other. But it's your code. Peace to your minds. Peace to your hearts. Peace to your life. You. ねけててててねあえに